It's an amazing journey, your story, but I was interested to know that you wanted to be an ear doctor by the age of 10. Why?
Well, Dad was deaf and he was in a chemist shop, and I was embarrassed at that stage when people would come into his chemist shop and ask for commercial and confidential items, and I thought I would help him and others like him.
So that obviously stayed with you. And I know, to cut a long story short, you left your family in Camden, went to Sydney Boys High and Scots College, and then studying medicine at the University of Sydney. Something happened on your first semester break. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, firstly, when I was at Scots College, we had one master who emphasised that God was real, and we should join a student Christian movement at Scots College, at Sydney University. And so I did, and after my first semester, I went to a camp, and on the camp we were asked to invite Jesus Christ into our lives. And I thought, oh, there can't be any harm in doing that. So I did, but I had this extraordinary experience of reality and experiencing what I now look back and believe was the presence of Christ.
And that obviously has been so important to you. Now, after that, you say you felt God shut doors on personal ambition to some extent for you and steered you into a passion for surgery. But it'd be interesting to know a bit more about that.
Well, firstly, I always wanted to help deaf people, and I didn't quite know how. And I did well in my studies and wanted then to be a thinking doctor, which was in those days a physician, not a surgeon. But I just found that all the jobs were taken, and I finished up being a general surgeon. And then the lowest of the order at that stage was ENT surgeons, but I had no option. But I'm glad I did.
Look, you married, you honeymooned on the Ariana's maiden voyage to the UK, went to study in Edinburgh College, University College of Surgeons. Your wife is to have a child, heads back to Australia, and you plan to join her after graduation, but you got stuck in Egypt. What happened there?
That was a terrible experience. I came back a self-confident surgeon, and on board the ship I thought I might have acute appendicitis, and I might have to take my own appendix out. For the first time in my life, I realised I couldn't rely on my own surgical skills, especially taking my own appendix out, and I had to trust in God. And I prayed. I was shipped off the boat to Port Said, put in an Egyptian hospital there, and the surgeon said he'd let me stay there, take my appendix out, and I'd stay for the next 2 months till the ship came by. I thought, no, I don't want that. I prayed. The nuns, I asked if they'd take me down to the chapel. We prayed, and miraculously, looking back, things opened up and I was able to get back to London and then back to Australia to my wife.
It's often said a great experience for a doctor is to be in hospital themselves, isn't it, really, to be in need of help. You returned to Australia in 1966, and a study by an American surgeon rekindles your passion to do research despite criticism. But there's no backing and there's no money. So you've got no money, you've got no backing. How do you actually make a fist of it then?
Well, firstly, I needed money to do anything, really, and no one wanted to help me because I was seen as an oddball. They called me the Clark. The clown Clark.
Oh dear.
and when that happened, I couldn't get money, and then I prayed about it. And I didn't pray just for money, just that God's will would be done.
And then I read about the telethon turned everything round. I mean, that's something that almost you could have never imagined would have happened. But tell us what happened.
Well, I was sitting in my office and I got the call from Sir Reginald Ansett's team, and he had probably been the answer to my prayer. And Reg wanted to run a telethon or two, because at that stage they were all relevant, and he wanted to do it for personal reasons for deafness. So that really gave us the kickstart.
Now, look, I just want to talk about this difficult area because it's one many Christians in the professional world can face, the criticism that goes around. You were called the animal doctor, not just the clown Clark, or the Clark Crown, as ever you call it. Animal doctor, what a title that was. And at that time, you could say your university job and your whole career's on the line.
My whole career could have been on the line. If I know that if I hadn't been successful ultimately in helping this deaf person, I would have had to pack my bags and leave Melbourne and leave the job. But the stress was considerable, and I did it and managed through prayer and trying to do the right thing.
In 1977, close to the time when you said you could operate on the first patient, you had a breakthrough.
Yes, well, there were many problems. Everything I did was breaking new ground. And when we're getting ready to implant our first patient, I realised that the electrodes that go in that tiny spiral of the inner ear wouldn't go. And they wouldn't pass round far enough. And I was getting desperate. And I discovered that the beach is a good place to do research. I found a little shell that was like the inner ear, picked up a grass blade which was bent at the tip, found that if it was stiff at the base, when curled around the shell, it would do what we wanted to do in the inner ear. And I raced back, cut our holiday short, and that has been the basis for all electrodes since that time.
Graeme, your whole holiday stories seem to have significant moments in them. You're on a ship, something changes, you end up in another country, and you're on the beach with an amazing discovery like that. So it's the 1st of August in 1978, the moment of truth arrived. Your colleagues couldn't believe how calm you were. So tell us about that.
Well, this was the key element in the whole study and journey. On the 1st of August 1978, I went down to the operating theatre. My colleague, Professor Crox, looked at me and said, "Professor Clark, today is your moment of truth." And I knew then that I had to be successful. And I had been away that weekend with my wife for a prayer weekend. I was really quite at peace. I left it to God, and everyone else was in a panic, and I was really at peace.
And that's the great thing of a Christian. In the end, it's not us. It's all of God through us, isn't it? Which is very different.
That's right. You can hand over these problems.
Looking back, you've helped something like 55,000 people through this particular research, and many more through what actually you've been engaged in. Can you believe how far it's all come?
No, sometimes I still have to pinch myself. Actually, there are 200,000 people now, which wouldn't have been even dreamed possible. When I started, I used to go to the press and say there might be a few thousand people in Australia, and I was severely criticised. But now it's just so wonderful seeing these people, children and adults, who have been restored to give them their life back.
And really, just in a sentence or two, what for you is the greatest joy that you've had in this kind of surgery?
The greatest joy, without any doubt, is seeing the young children being normally hearing and being able to communicate with their family and friends, and the joy it brings to the family, to them, and the opportunities makes me still want to cry.
And let me just say that really there is a link between that joy and your first desire as a 10-year-old child to say, I want to help my dad to hear again. Because even though you may not have been able to help your dad to hear like that, you've done it for many, many more people.
That's been a wonderful journey that he helped me start.
Yes, and we thank God for you, and thank you for giving us the time to come into the studio and share something of that lovely God story in your life, Graeme.
Pleasure indeed. I like to share it.